Six Flags was started on August 5th, 1961 in Arlington, Texas by Angus Wayne. But since then, Six Flags has grown into an empire of parks, but not an unstoppable one. They have had their troubles in the late 80s and early 90s. Premier Parks was buying every park they could get their hands on, not stopping till they started selling off some parks.
It's one of the largest attractions and one of the largest employers in the Louisville area.
But just hours ago, Six Flags announced that Kentucky Kingdom would close its doors for good.
But even then, they were still adding many big additions. This drove the Six Flags chain into bankruptcy, which would drastically change the future of this once unstoppable giant. On June 1st, 2009, Six Flags announced that they would delay their payment of their $15 million debt. But less than 2 weeks later, the chain went into Chapter 11 bankruptcy protection. But they said their parks would continue to operate normally as the chain was structured. But in February of 2010, they abandoned Six Flags Kentucky Kingdom, and years before, they sold off Frontier City and Six Flags Darien Lake. In March of 2004, Six Flags sold Worlds of Adventure, which was the chain's biggest park, to Cedar Fair, which would eventually lead to that park's demise. The last ground-up Intamin the chain added was in 2011, with Green Lantern at Six Flags Magic Mountain, which faced a 2-year downtime and has since been removed and relocated to Luron. And the last ground-up B&M coaster was with X-Flight at Six Flags Great America in 2012. And since then, with a few exceptions, the chain has only gotten clones and RMC conversions, which are solid additions but also have stopped giving their attractions original themes. But in recent years, the chain has started to go out of their comfort zone, adding Max Force to Six Flags Great America and West Coast Racers to Six Flags Magic Mountain. But most of their parks have been left out of the change. So in past years, the Six Flags chain has been closing all their rides, and this is called Homogenization. But more on that later. But the issue is that if I've ridden the 43 spin at Discovery Kingdom, there's no reason for me to go to Fiesta, Texas to ride their version of that 43 spin. And I feel the reason Six Flags gives for adding a new ride every year, we at Six Flags like to give our guests a reason to come back every year, is incorrect, because I understand why they're doing it this way. I just don't understand why they're doing it the specific way they're doing. Because at most of their parks, they're removing the original rides, or rides that people care about, and replacing them with low-budget clones, and or just not replacing them. And in some cases, they're closing rides and leaving them there. The best examples I can think is Alder Park's Log Fumes and River Rapids, which drives families. And the issue is that they're not putting any new water rides in to replace them, which leads to very unrounded parks. And already most of their parks feel the same, so I can only imagine if they keep going down this path with only adding clones, they will all be the same, and there will be no reason for anyone to visit any of their parks. So do I support the cloning of rides? No and yes. I see why they're cloning rides, I just don't see the reason they all need to have the same name. Like Batman the Ride can be found at most of their parks. But can we talk about how stupid their names are? Like Harley Quinn Crazy Coaster. Like, oh, it's a ride. I thought it was a fancy sign because it's never open. But the real problem is that Joker can be an SNS free spin, a premium launch coaster, or an RMC conversion, a super loop, or a giant discovery. Which just makes no sense, because it wouldn't cost them much more to give original names to all their rides. And this just goes back to homogenization. The chain's trying to make everything the same, and I see no reason for them to use clone names. Fair Cedar Fair is guilty about using Woodstock Express, but that's in a kids' land, and they don't use the same name everywhere. And you're not going to go to California's Great America and find their carousel named Valraven. And Six Flags gives their bigger parks an original theme most of the time, and I realize every park in the chain gets a ride every year, but some parks didn't need that new ride, because the rest of the park's falling apart. But overall, if the GP like the additions, and they're working because the majority of the people visiting the parks are the GP, and without them we wouldn't have the parks. So just like any chain, they have their favorites, but Six Flags only has two: Six Flags Great America and Six Flags Magic Mountain. The only thing is all their parks do get something, but not what they need. It's good for these parks to keep adding new additions, but they aren't always needed. And parks like Six Flags Magic Mountain have received many new lands in the past few years, but Six Flags Great Adventure has lost one, and many other parks have had the same problem. And the other issue I have is when you go to park receive this issue when they're losing big parts of the park and even full lands. The other inherent issue with the chain this large is that most people making the chain's choices aren't at the parks or have even been to some of them. And they're the ones making the big decisions, which leads to parks that look worn out and are tired. From rides that desperately need new paint to rides and buildings that haven't been open for years. And if you go to any Six Flags park, there's always multiple rides closed and abandoned. And this goes back to upper management, because yes, there are park managers on site, but the people that are calling the big shots are the people that haven't even been to most of the parks. And the company's just too big for itself, so they can't focus on just one park, because they have too many to take care of. And because the manager... Okay, so back to homogenization. Homogenization is the act of making something similar or uniform through composition and or function. Six Flags really tries this because these are their parks' names. And when you got a Six Flags park, they all feel the same. Same bad music, same cheap theming, same rides, same everything. Already most of their parks feel the same, so if they keep going down this same way, then all their parks are going to be the same, and there's going to be no reason for anyone to travel to any of their parks, other than the closest one, or any. With the new CEO of the chain, Mike Spanos, we have already seen many changes at all their parks. We've seen new paint jobs on most of their parks' rides, coasters, and buildings, and most closed water rides are now filling back up with water. Their parks are already looking much better, and all their parks that are currently open have seen new Halloween events to replace the now defunct Fright Fest. All Six Flags have seen the new Hollow Fest and take on the old event with the same terrifying mazes except better overall atmosphere. So will we see other Six Flags events replaced? Well, as of right now, we don't know. But that brings the question, what else can change? Honestly, I don't know right now, but we're finding out all together. Like, will we see more original rides, or will we see any rides or parks sold to bring the chain down to a smaller size? And one we're all asking, will they ever work with B&M or Intimate again? Well, as of right now, everything's unsure. But all we know is that there's a light at the end of the tunnel for the Six Flags chain, and we might be there.